our sanctifier. Amen. Well, I was just thinking, when was the last time I gave a sermon in stocking feet and an old pair of jeans? Just saying. See, snow days are wonderful, aren't they? But first of all, I mean, just to say it one more time, I really love the Gospel of Mark. It is a symphony of ideas and images with themes that capture you and then disappear, only to return later with such magnitude when you least expect them. Its construction is brilliant. It is truly an inspired work. And let's be clear when I say that, it wasn't just dictated by God, right? But produced by a writer who was touched by the Spirit, who was moved by what he had heard, by what he saw happening before his own eyes, and by the promise of what lay ahead, if only those in his audience could catch the same vision and find the patience and the courage it would require to bring it about. And I believe that it was the author's desire to help them find that clarity and courage in those dark moments that followed the disastrous Roman-Jewish war. And I think that provided the motivation for the creation of this text and for its unmistakable message that as disciples we are to take heart, that in spite of our blindness, in spite of our failures, in spite of, using Mark's terminology, our hardness of heart and unwillingness to be opened and to change, that God will still use us, to bring about the new age. I believe that's why the gospel ends as abruptly as it does, with no sign of Jesus and the women running off in terror and amazement and not saying a word to anyone. Because now anything can happen. And we are the ones who will write the next sentences. It's brilliant. But in today's text, however, we only find ourselves 21 verses into the first chapter. But significant stuff is still happening. Several of those significant themes are beginning to take shape, and that will return to us. For almost immediately, Mark gives us this miraculous healing story. A man with an unclean spirit is hanging around in the synagogue, and in this first miracle story, Mark is actually revealing to us what his healing miracles are all about, in fact, what Jesus is all about. As we saw with the parables from Matthew last summer, Mark is teaching us how to read these stories, not only them, but his whole gospel and how to interpret it. So let's take a closer look and see where it takes us. So first of all, the thing to notice is that compared to the other healing stories in Mark, it's pretty straightforward. We are, after all, just taking our first steps with Mark. I mean, think of it as if we are just learning how to walk through Mark's gospel, and the degree of difficulty will certainly increase. And for Jesus too, as we'll see. Why, in the next chapter, Mark escalates things. Friends of a paralytic have to bring him to Jesus and have to cut a hole in the roof and take it apart and drop him down. There's drama. And then suddenly the Pharisees are thrown into it as well. It's almost like a video game. You know, you move up in levels and suddenly there are more challenges and more, of your antagonists appear. But anyway, this first story is a simple transaction. The man with the unclean spirit suddenly appears in the synagogue, and I always have to watch that word simple. But the man with the unclean spirit suddenly appears in the synagogue. The spirit recognizes Jesus and yells at him. Ooh, another theme there, but for another time, sorry. And Jesus then calls the unclean spirit to leave the man. It obeys, and everyone is amazed. Well, simple transaction, so far so good. But let's look harder. Because there's something strange here. This scene is, as one writer put it, both alien to us and also alien to our sense of healing. And we need to pause and give that serious attention. I mean, think about it. How many health professionals do you know who have ever offered up a diagnosis of unclean spirit? Not many, I'm sure. And would you know what it was if you encountered it? Yeah, and I know what you're thinking, and we're going to come to that. But I mean, how do you know? We're not even given any of the symptoms. We are simply introduced to this man as having an unclean spirit, but that is a diagnosis that Mark certainly recognized, and one that his readers in this age no longer understand. Hold that thought. What comes next in the story is the man crying out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Now, could that outburst be a clue? Is it one of the symptoms? Well, if it is, then in our day, the man in the story might be categorized as a person who hears voices and us and speaks out loud to them and with them. In our modern context, it could mean a diagnosis of something like paranoid schizophrenia or bipolar disease, some condition that might yield hallucinations or voices. So then we interpret the story as one in which Jesus heals a mentally ill person who hears voices that are not his. Literalists and tradition always look for the easy way out. But we miss the insight and inspiration of this story if we try to interpret it in such a relatively limited way of understanding or dismissing it as being this. And besides, Mark worked so hard on this masterpiece. The point is this. We tend to look at this as a medical or mental health problem. And in some way that makes us feel good and also feel hopeful about our lives, which are certainly impacted by similar issues. Mark, however, looked at it as something different. For Mark, this is a spiritual diagnosis. That part of the dimension of being human, which is relational, all about relationships, relational to one's environment and every meaning of that word on a more holistic level, but especially relationality to other persons and ultimately to God, who, as the writer of John puts it, is the pure relationality called love. We are born into this spiritual realities, I might say, and we're nurtured by them. Those are the things, to borrow Paul's line from the book of Acts, in which we live and move and have our being. And it is fundamental to being human that we are raised within them. Now, that said, in terms of this particular gospel reading, I think Mark is saying that the healing of this unclean spirit is actually the healing of those deeper spiritual relationships between the man and his community. And in turn, not only the healing of this particular man, but that through him, Jesus is offering healing to his whole community. He is, after all, gathering with them in the synagogue. He is in the community. He belongs there. And now with the relationships healed, there he can remain. Further, as I suggested at the beginning of this exercise, we might be glimpsing into what Mark is doing with this passage, that this could be expanded to the idea of Jesus offering healing, relational healing, to the whole human family. There's a clue here about his mission, which, by the way, that relational healing of the whole human family is the definition of salvation, the healing of relationship between God and each other. Again, Mark is telling us how to understand this and the other stories that will follow, that this is the context, that they are grounded in spiritual matters about blindness, possession, spiritual paralysis. But there's more that is worth mentioning here, didn't you know? And one clue lies in what the Spirit calls out. Have you come to destroy us? Part of what makes the Spirit unclean is the age-old dualism of this us, them, good, bad, even, clean, and unclean. As we saw a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the first creation story, this dualism is thrust into our spiritual conditioning from the beginning. It's nurtured as sacred violence that seeks to expel or destroy those who are the them to our us. Hence the Spirit crying out, have you come to destroy us? It is what is expected. It is what is justified as being righteous. It is what, after all, has been written from the beginning. Remember, we talked about beginning in Genesis, beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ. But no, you see, Jesus has not come to destroy him. He instead calls out the spirit of violence which seeks to destroy all those on the margins who don't fit the requirements for inclusion. So from this point of view, Jesus has come to the synagogue on this day to give the community a recreated way of being human that is no longer based on destroying some other. And now there's even more worth mentioning here. If we consider that Mark is saying that Jesus has come to transform these lives, which can be a troubling notion for a community, one that never wanted any trouble, then the us in the cry of the man with the Spirit might just be the cry of the community. And Jesus coming to them could be their destruction in a manner of speaking. And perhaps they were fearful of that transformation. And this theme plays out. Fearful that what they believed about God would have to change, that what they held dear would have to change, that they might actually have to love enemies and outcasts, that they would have to rethink devotion to tribe and to wealth, that they might have to abandon their old ways. You know, in the end, most of us would resist that kind of destruction. We're only human after all. We cling to the stuff we know. There's comfort, security there. The man with the unclean spirit had nothing to lose. Being transformed by God would have been an improvement in his lot. But other people, the rest of the community, had more to lose. And the more they had to lose, the more they resented Jesus. And that theme will gain momentum in Mark's gospel as well. The saddest of those stories might have been the rich young man who walks away from Jesus because he couldn't imagine sharing his wealth. He was one of many who heard the good news and concluded that, well, for them, it was actually bad news. Like the whole town of Gerasene. I mean, Jesus goes there, heals one man possessed by a legion of demons, and the town asks him to leave. They probably read the first story, right? Understood it and wanted no part of Jesus. They were going to protect their community from this madman. You know, churches really do the same with their own without realizing it perhaps, although there may be some intentionality. And you can see it in the way the churches welcome visitors into their midst. You know, we smile, we greet, and then we engage in resume sharing. You know, who are you? Where are you from? Where did you go to school? I had a gatekeeper in my first Episcopal parish, and that was always his question. Where did you go to school? And then you'd hear him say, no, I meant college. Oh, really? Gatekeeper. But we ask things like, what do you do for a living? Do you have children? We hope. What part of town do you live in? And when can you serve on this committee? We think we're being friendly. Deep down, of course, we're just asking if they'll fit in. Are they our kind? Do they share the same values? Can they help us be who we want to be? What should be asked, of course, is what Jesus would ask. Where do you hurt? What are you looking for? Because if we knew where they hurt, then we could be a healing community for them, perhaps by sharing how God had healed us. If we knew what they were looking for, we could help them search, and we could share our own discoveries along the way. But even doing that sort of gracious welcoming would require us to accept the very destruction that the demoniac and his community feared. I mean, the fundamental point of entering into a faith community is to seek transformation of life, answers to the big questions, meaning. That means, letting go and letting God, as they say. It means giving up on old practices and self-defeating ways and embracing a different way of going ahead, embracing God's ways. It means turning down our fears and listening to the still small voice of God. For you see then, and here's the Mark's ugly secret, the answer to the demoniac's question really was, yes, Jesus had come to destroy the demoniac, but he had come to set him free. Amen.